Welcome back. Another episode of the podcast. This is number 17, and we are joined by another industry leader here. So, Landon, man, tell us who you are and why you do what you do.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want the condensed version, or as long as I can make it? You want the full story?
Just fill it out, man. Whatever goes, goes.
All right.
I'm not fussed either way. I want to
Cool.
know about
All
you,
right, well,
but
Yeah, for sure. So I'm essentially as lifelong gamer as it comes. I've been doing it since I was 3 or 4. I could play games before I could walk. Pretty much, that was kind of me in a nutshell. And growing up, I did gaming in every unhealthy way possible. I was at one point like morbidly obese, extremely unhealthy, no sleep schedule, had zero social skills. I was just as unhealthy as it came when it came to gaming, but it was always a really big passion of mine. So when I was deciding on the career path that I wanted to go down, I was really trying to find a way that I can merge my love of gaming, but also a way to help people do better while gaming. And so I kind of found my footing by going through an educational process and getting my degree in psychology. And then I followed that up with getting a master's in performance psychology. And then that's where I really just like smashed the two fields together, where I brought esports and performance coaching together. So teaching kids or teaching adults or professional gamers or amateurs, wherever you're looking at, teaching them how to be gamers, but in a healthier way that's also going to improve their performance. So taking like 15-year-olds, teaching them how to structure their days properly so that they are a little bit healthier, but also making a little bit of a closer push to that pro scene. And that's kind of where I specialize in, is anything that comes down to like the psychological part of it, the mental part of it, the cognitive part of it. That's where I come in and help people.
He's the guru of the stuff you never thought about. So
Exactly.
if you guys, I mean, this is going to be a hot topic. I'm going to go back and listen to this probably 3 or 4 times. If you are a prospective player, a current player, hang on these words. Let's take notes. I'm excited to hear the rest. So please continue. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh yeah, no worries at all. But yeah, that's kind of how I found my footing. Is I want to make a difference in esports, but at the same time, I'm also utterly obsessed with expertise. So making people happier and healthier gamers, but also making them better at whatever they're doing. And I don't necessarily teach people how to be better at League of Legends or how to be better at Valorant or how to be better at CS:GO, but I help you kind of set up your mind and your environment so that you can learn quicker and do it in a way that you're not going to burn out, or you're not going to have breakdowns with your teams, or when things go wrong, you have the tools to kind of solve it. So that's really like my bread and butter, is figuring out the mental component of esports. And I've been doing that for a couple years now. And I work with pretty much like the full spectrum of gamer, anywhere from 12-year-old kids that are trying to get into Fortnite all the way up to professionals that are going into the LCS or LEC or the Apex scene, or whatever professional scene. So I kind of work with that wide range of people, but I also go beyond that a little bit, and I work in the business side of esports, and I work with academies, I work with research, with science, whatever it is, but kind of pretty much everything to do with esports. I got my finger in it at this point.
Hey, Zach, I wonder if we can afford Landon.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, it sounds
We'll
really
see.
interesting.
Maybe.
I always preach that to my guys. I'm sure Zach is going through that right now with our teams. The mental, mentality and game awareness, all of it together. It basically touches on psychology itself, right?
Yeah.
That's what some guys perform better than others, right? Execute better because they're clear, they're focused on the things that they need to be focused on. I'm really happy to have you here, man. Talk about that stuff.
Awesome. Sweet. I love it. You can put 12 hours. You can get as good as you can mechanically in the game. But if game day comes and you start getting nervous and you start getting anxious and you start getting angry, like, it doesn't matter how good you are, because your brain's shutting down and you have to find ways to overcome that. And that's where I step in. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you're the best League of Legends player in the world, the best Apex player in the world. If you shut down mentally going into a game, you're done.
That's so crazy that you say that. Just coming from you, as this is being your profession, and some of the things. What did I tell the team the other day? They were going into like a big game, like against a rival, and I said, at this level of play, you guys are all skill-wise going to be, really close to each other. The people that walk away with the win versus the people that walk away with the loss is the difference of 1 second of loss of concentration.
Yep.
And at this level, that's what you got to do. That 1%
Exactly.
matters. Crazy. Love to hear that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, when the differences come down to like 1 or 2%, you don't yourself necessarily feel those differences. Like you wake up that day, you feel normal, but you might be 1 or 2% different, and that's what we need to make sure that doesn't hurt you, right? Because you don't necessarily feel those differences, but they are still impacting your performance. And so you might be hitting those losses just because you're 1% slower or you're making 1% more mistakes or whatever it might be. And that can be game changer for the top teams.
Yeah, definitely. I would say it is a game changer for the top teams. It's a decider in anything you do, really. You know, the people that are doing it better are just, you know, going that 1% extra. That's all it is.
That's all it takes. I mean, in any professional video game at this point, like a split second decides who wins, right? Like it's one mistake and the game's over, one error, one miscommunication and the game's over.
Right. Well, I'm excited to circle back on that, or I guess we could touch on it now. What is like some of the? Obviously, you guys aren't paying for this session here, chat, so we'll try to keep it vague but descriptive enough. What are some of the things that you're like going through with some of these clients of yours, like maybe as a routine? I know Logan, our player manager, he likes to do like 45 minutes before any game, do some stretches, breathing exercises and things like that. Is that like relevant to what you're doing, or probably much deeper?
No, that's actually like the cornerstone or like the starting point to anything, and I can kind of break it down a little bit further why those things are extremely important.
Yeah.
And it's because going into a competition or going into an intense scrim, essentially your body's getting flooded with hormones, right? Like humans aren't necessarily designed to play video games. Like we didn't evolve in that fashion. We evolved to do the essential, like the fight and flight kind of situation where there's a lion attacking us or a lion chasing us. But however, going into a heavy competition, our body reacts the same as if we were being hunted by a predator, and that doesn't help us in game. However, if we throw in some stretches and we throw in some breathing exercise, it really helps our body to calm down. It utilizes those hormones in the way they're meant to be. So I have my athletes doing, like, if they're having like a panic attack or they're having performance anxiety, they'll kick around a soccer ball, they'll do some jumping jacks, they'll do something that uses the hormones that are now flooding their body in the way that they were intended to be, so that we can burn off those hormones and then get back to the game. Because as long as you're being flooded by that anxiety, essentially your brain, its ability to make decisions and think logically and make correct and fast decisions is shut down. And so we want to fix that. And that's honestly, like, breathing exercises and light exercise in general is one of the key ways doing that.
That's good stuff, man. I would say, you know, there's a lot of truth to that, 100%. So you guys heard it. If you're not doing your jumping jacks.
Yeah. Jumping jacks wins matches. Remember that.
Your hashtag. So I'm interested to hear, Zach, if you want to take the lead on this, obviously, because I wasn't in Poland, so I don't know what happened. And obviously this was a few years ago. But let's...
It was actually a year ago.
Oh.
It was in December of last year. Well, actually, no. What was it? It was September, right?
Somewhere, yeah. I think it was in September or somewhere around that. I can't even remember at this point.
Yeah, at this point, I can't either.
Like
but that thing was like insane. It was like they flew. I think it was 200 teams out there.
Yeah, something
I have
like
some pictures for the
chat,
know. Guys. So while you guys are talking, I'm going to pull up some of those pictures.
But they flew a bunch of Apex teams out there. They literally told us kind of, you know, all right, so you guys are going to be playing against each other. We're going to set up 2 stages, you know, and then, you know, everybody arrives, like, and like the whole thing was just crazy because the security was locked down. Like, they were originally going to allow people to come in, you know, to the tournament and, like, you know, spectate and whatnot. And then they decided afterwards, because of something that happened, that they weren't going to. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, like, legit, I think me and like 3 other guys were the only team managers that were actually there, off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, I know the team that I was there with, Team Secret, they had their team manager, but they wouldn't let me backstage either because I was like a coach, and coaches weren't allowed. It was players and managers only. Or players, I don't even know if managers were allowed backstage, but no. It was a strange event.
Yeah, because I was representing Love Gaming at the time, and then also obviously I was there with as a guest at TSM. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was a crazy tournament.
I mean, it was fun. I had a good time at least. Like it was.
Mhm.
I every time I get the chance to go to a major esport event, like I love it. Like I always, at the end of the day, my love is esports, and being around people that are at the top of their game is always fun. So it was. I remember watching at that tournament. I'm sure everybody probably thinks this as well, but like that clutch moment that 789 had when it was like a 1v3 at the end, like that was a pretty cool moment. I know that the arena went pretty nuts at that play.
I was telling Will, I was literally sitting right behind him, and like he kept it, like he saw me in my brother's sweater, and so like he turned around and like threw it in my face when they won that. So when TSM actually clutched it up and won, like I like jumped on the guy's back, like screaming up and down, like jumping, like going, yeah. They won! Like it was so funny.
Man,
The
I'm
guy
sure.
was so mad. He just like sat back down.
Yeah.
Poor guy. I think he needs you now, Landon.
Yeah.
You should have given me his business card.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we must have bumped into each other at least once or twice because I mean that place wasn't that big, so I'm sure we probably saw each other here and there.
More than once, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
It's crazy.
And also
small
that-
world, huh?
Yeah, and that final was like that was nuts. 8 hours or something like that for TSM to take
It
W.
was crazy.
Oh,
8 hours.
We were
Wait a
doing
minute.
like 14 to 16-hour days that day. Like,
Yeah, like-
it was. Everybody would go back to the hotel and be like, "All right, so how the hell are we getting food now?" Because the food at that place was awful too.
yeah, it was no. Agreed.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know. This is kind of off topic, but after pretty much every moment that I got, because I'm Ukrainian, that's my background. So I would go searching the streets for pierogi shops all the time. So I'd just like Google Maps pierogi shops, and I'd search Poland or Krakow for all sorts of like pierogi shops nonstop.
That's awesome.
I
Do you find
think
any?
we lived off of
Oh, yeah.
McDonald's
Oh,
and
yeah.
KFC.
Ew.
KFC.
International
Oh.
No,
McDonald's.
international McDonald's and KFC is actually delicious compared to American
is.
KFC.
What?
Yes.
Right.
I
Yeah,
went
no,
to-
dead serious.
I went to a Pizza Hut in London. Worst decision ever.
Pizza Hut in
A
London.
Pizza
Wow.
Hut. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
They don't do pizza.
Poland McDonald's is pretty good. I had it a few times.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I heard Japan is pretty good. Their Mickey D's and burgers are really good. Their Big Macs are really good in Japan.
I'd
I believe
love
it.
to. Yeah, I'd love to go try one. It's probably not my first choice
For
if I
sure.
was going to Japan, but hey.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, of
If you're in a
course.
pinch.
But, you know,
If you're in
you
a
gotta
pinch.
like give it a shot, like try it out to see how it is.
Definitely. Well, hey, I want to hear more about this. The founding of the academy, the Northern Esports
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Academy. What's that all about?
yeah, for sure. Well, I can touch on Northern Esports Academy, and I can also touch on a couple of the other companies that I work for, and just kind of give you a full scope of the work I'm doing. That might be a good way to do it. But yeah, so Northern Esports Academy. I'm a Canadian, so I live up in Canada, and in Toronto is where I'm primarily based out of now. There's not much for the development scene in esports right now, and me and a partner, we decided that we need to do something about that because like there's esports just north of the border, like up in Canada, it doesn't exist right now, and it's just pitiful.
Right.
So we wanted to try and find a way that would allow kids that are coming into the esport industry and wanting to make a career out of it, and not just in competitive gaming, but if they want to be like a team owner, or they wanted to be a coach or an analyst or a caster or an event manager, we wanted to provide the training facility that allows them the opportunity to learn what they need to learn in order to thrive in the industry. So we partnered with a few companies in Toronto to try and figure out a way to do that. And one example is we work with a LAN center here called Waves Gaming, which is pretty much like a state-of-the-art gaming facility. It has like
I feel
50
like I've
some
heard of
top.
that.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty big. They host tournaments online, so potentially like
Yeah, I
maybe
think I have heard of
premieres
that.
in. Yeah, there we go. But we work with them, provide kids with the environment or the ecosystem and the resources to get good at whatever they want to do. So if a kid wants to get good at Fortnite, they come in, We put them into classes. I'll train them on the psych or the mental side of things, and we also have mechanics coaches or in-game coaches to help them develop there. And then we also provide essentially like brand training. So I'm sure you guys have seen this, but like a lot of kids, they have very bad representation online where they're either trash talking or they're pretty much ruining their own image online by the way they act online. So PR training essentially is how we do that, just so that I know that there's been lots of kids that absolutely have the skill to go pro, but because of their online image, teams won't touch them. Just because, so making sure that they are aware of how their actions online can impact their potential of a career in esports. So really, it's just like a full holistic training approach, kind
I
of
feel like you
how
should say that one twice.
Right?
Yeah,
oh my goodness. It's crazy. Like I've worked with kids who I swear to God, like they have every bit that's necessary to go pro in the game, but it's purely because of the way they act or the way they treat people online, it's going to stop their career. And if they don't fix that, they're just not going to go pro, not because they're not good, but because of the way they act. And that's like devastating, right? Like if you are held back from your dream career just because of the way you act online, like something needs to change. And so we want to make sure that kids aren't losing career opportunities because they are toxic online.
Absolutely. That's actually a great topic that happens all the time.
Too
At
often.
any level, from amateur to pro. Like I had companies directly send me emails about my players in the past. This kid's PR. That's like a common like thing that the companies will do because they do want to work with them through their IPs and whatnot. But they see their social media now. They see their Twitch channels, polluted with toxic, like language and all that stuff. And so that's a great topic. And definitely the players need to understand that that's key of them. It's as part of their development and becoming like pro players. Either they need to clean up their act pretty much. And I have a question for you on that
For sure.
subject. How do you deal with that a kid that is talented enough to make it pro, but doesn't have the attitude? How do you deal with them on a personal level?
That's a good question because it's tough and it's unique to each child. Not child. That's kind of each professional, right? Like I don't want to call them children. To each gamer, it's a little bit unique, and it really just starts by awareness, right? Like a lot of people, they act online without thinking. Fortnite's a really good example for us. Not to pick on Fortnite, but I would have countless kids like they duo up, they go into a tournament, they do great, awesome, everything's fine. They go into another tournament and everything goes wrong, and then they start flaming each other online. And like they don't necessarily realize the impact of their actions when they're doing that. Like they think that they're calling out their teammate, they think they're being productive on that, and they think that they're doing the right thing, and they're kind of protecting their own image by saying, it was my partner that did all these bad things, not me. That's essentially like what's happening in those situations. So it really starts with awareness, showing them like what they're doing isn't effective, showing them the impact that this has on other people, and then also really breaking down and using examples of how professional organizations have rejected players because of these kind of situations. But it's a very long process to try and change these things because the way people act online is usually like a habit, and you have to break that habit and change the way they act. But yeah, so awareness is the first step, and then showing them that positive or helpful behavior actually does help you develop faster in terms of skill and build team cohesion, whatever other good stuff you want to name. That's kind of the starting process, really just making them aware of what they're doing.
Interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, I think you could make a whole episode out of just that.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think here's a piece of information for coaches out there when they're working with kids in this. Essentially, you can't expect the players that you're working with to change overnight. So if you have a 14-year-old Fortnite or League of Legends or Apex player who is incredibly toxic and you want to help them grow out of that, you have to understand that that's not an instant process. You can't go in, give them the lessons, give them the knowledge or the materials, and then next week they're fine, they're no longer toxic. It doesn't work like that. You do have to have patience with them, and you do have to work with them over a long period of time. And every time you go into that session with them, or every time you go to work with them, you have to believe and you have to pretty much have hope and belief in that player that they'll grow. Because if you lose that belief and that hope in that player, then they're going to give up on themselves. But you just have to recognize that they're not going to change overnight.
Wow. Great point for coaches and managers out there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice.
I wish I would have known that 4 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
tell yourself
Well, I see-
something 10 years ago.
I see a lot of coaches go into training and then they expect instant change or instant feedback from their players, and unfortunately that's not the way. As much as we want that to be the way things work, it's like changing the mentality or the way somebody acts is the same way as trying to get them good at a game. It takes a long time to rank up,
Oh, so I have
and
a
the same
question
goes
you.
for the mental.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you're like posing these, let's say, new changes, right, with somebody, I've always been leaning one way or the other here. Would you say, in your opinion, people respond better when they're like told this is how you need to do it, and then you just remind them all the time this is how you need to do it? Or is the approach more like, I'm going to show you what it looks like, and I'm going to do it so well, and you just follow my lead?
Yeah, so
Kind of like
I think
inspire them to do it rather than tell them
Yeah.
to do it.
this does kind of come down to each coach, right? Like each coach has a different coaching style. The way that I take it is that I believe that if I was to go to a 14-year-old kid and tell them that you're doing things wrong and you're acting this way and look how it's happening, like, of course they're logically going to understand that that's true, right? Like they're going to get that you're right. But emotionally or psychologically, it doesn't fully click. And so the approach I take is more of like guiding them, right? So I'll maybe ask them questions or pose situations or create hypotheticals, and then they search for the answer themselves and they figure out, okay, so if I act this way to my teammate, it's going to cause my teammate to act like this, and then this is going to be the outcome, right? So I don't tell them what the outcome is, and I don't tell them what their teammate's going to be like if they act this way, but I get them to the point where they're starting to question what their teammate's going to act like and what the outcome's going to be. And
Set
most
the
kids, like,
expectation.
yeah, and I mean, like, truthfully, like most teenagers they are smart. Like, despite the us not giving them credit all the time, they can usually come to the right conclusion if you guide them properly. So if I have a toxic teenager that's potentially could go pro in League of Legends, but they're just an absolute awful teammate, I don't need to tell them that they're an awful teammate. They probably can figure that out on themselves if I guide them there and ask them the right question. So that's the approach I take, is the guiding or the mentorship, or just trying to help them get there and not just directly take them there.
Interesting. I think that becomes a lot tougher with the higher tier, right? With the pros. A kid already established, they land into you take over as their coach or manager, and then they already have, under salary under the org, right? There's complications there. I faced that before. And it becomes more like a partnership, right? That's what I figure. So I would treat them from the get-go. I would treat them as professionals from the beginning.
Yeah.
I would say, you guys are partners. I'm not your dad or mom, but I'm your big brother, pretty much. And I want to cherish your career, and I want to take care of you guys. And I think that established already a professional partnership with them. And like you're saying, we have to give them credit. They're smart. They can figure things out. But before that, they've been pounded, right? Before that, they've been through other coaches as well.
Yep.
That they're just like, no, you got to do this way, But they don't really show them, examples of how to get it done in a different way, not just in game. So I'm glad that you brought that point up.
Yeah, and I mean,
right.
For what it's worth too, it's like, even if I'm working with like a T4, T5, or an amateur or whatever, like as the low it comes in gaming, I always treat my players like professionals. Obviously, like the intensity is a little bit different, but I treat them like professionals because if I'm working with somebody, it means they want to go pro, right? Like I don't really deal with casual gamers for the most part, because that's not. So if I'm working with you, I'm treating you with like a professional, and I have high expectations for you. It's not out of your reach for those expectations. Like I tailor it for that tier, but I always treat them like professionals, because I can't treat somebody like they're an amateur, or I can't treat somebody like they're not worthy or anything like that. Like they want to be professional, so I'm gonna treat you like professional, so that when you actually make it to the professional scene, you're ready. You have the expectations already there. You know what to expect because you've been treated like a professional the entire way.
Wow, that's great. That's great. We
sure
need more of you guys.
Yeah,
for sure.
They're coming.
We do.
Yeah. I get calls, or I have calls with people from my field, because most people in my field are in traditional sports, right? And I'm starting to get calls from them because of all the lockdowns and shutdowns from COVID. Traditional sports has pretty much cut funding for my field. Like, so a lot of my colleagues, they're like, "Hey, Landon, they're calling me up. They're like, how do I get into esports? I hear you're doing great in esports. I want to get in too." But so there's lots of people that want to come do this in esports. They're just not sure how to yet.
You need my cell number, or
Yeah, I'll send them your guys' way.
no,
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
absolutely.
Exactly.
Send them to Lion.
Yeah, send them to me.
Yeah, so
Yeah, there we
Zach,
go.
what's your feedback on this, man? You have a lot of experience coaching, and both of you guys do. What is like something that you would ask, like, if you had opportunity to work with Landon when you guys were managing teams? What is your number one priority if you bring Landon on as an owner or a team manager? What is your thought process there? What is something you really want him to
I mean, he's
teach?
already doing everything, in the right direction. I mean, like, you look at a dynamic like Logan and I, where, Logan is basically doing, the aspect of, like, the holistic things, like what he's doing. And then, I'm doing the part where, like, I'm kind of guiding these people as they're coming into the organization. It's basically, he's like an all-in-one package, kind of.
Trying to.
I think for me, if I was
know-
managing teams, the number one thing that I would want to, have like a psych coach, if you will, is use your words when you're speaking to your teammates very intentionally, and not get like jumbled while you're making call outs, or you're trying to give somebody some information, giving all the chit chat and the in between round stuff. That to me is what I would focus on if I was coaching.
Yeah.
What about you, Will?
Honestly, like that's you hit it right there. Like, that's one of the biggest hangups a lot of teams have is their communication. One thing is that chit chat that happens between rounds. Like, Valorant is a great example because you have those, or CS:GO as well, I guess, but you have those little brief moments between rounds, and teams that aren't quite at top tier yet, they aren't using that time effectively because they're chit chatting about
Yes.
random stuff,
Or the
right?
last game, or the last round.
Yeah, like, you're
Ugh.
in game and you have things to look forward to still. Like, you still need to be focused and you still need to be maintaining that focus. And if you're flaming your teammates or you're talking about other things outside the game, you're wasting time that the other team is probably using to figure out ways to beat you in this next round. So that's
Right.
like one of the big things is communication. Also, this is one of my own personal coaching philosophies, and it's that when you're in game, mistakes that happen in that game need to die immediately, because if you essentially, like, the way that it works is a lot of teams, something bad will happen, and it doesn't matter which game, but something bad will happen, and then everybody will get upset about it, and they'll start talking about what you could have done differently, what happened, what they need to do about that. Like, they start talking about trying to resolve that issue in game, and truthfully,
Completely
like,
not helpful.
it's not helpful at that
Right.
time because you can't solve that issue in game. The only thing that matters in that moment is the next 20 minutes of play, or the next however long you have left to play. That's what matters. That's what you need to focus on. The what just went wrong, there's a time and place to talk about that, and that's what I call, like, the debriefing session, which happens after game. But a lot of teams, they get hung up on what goes wrong, and they talk about that, and they let that issue control their emotions for the next 20 minutes.
Right.
Preach
Just
it.
to add to that, I always told my guys they have to have short time memory. They do.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Just
Yeah.
to add to that, because like you're saying, it's true. It happens with every team. They get hung up. Oh, you should have done that. They always call, name calling starts from that, and it trickles down into other things. And then they bring issues on the past, right? Oh, on the qualifier, and then that goes to, they get out of focus on that area and things like that. And so they can't really focus on what's coming next, right? Which is a
Exactly.
lot more important than the past. There's nothing you can do about the past. So you just need to move on.
Yeah.
I would tell my guys, like, hey, just forget about it. Just move on. We'll discuss it after a game. Pretty much,
Yeah.
That's it. That will be the end of it. And then people will get quiet, refocus, and continue to play whatever they're playing. Another thing that I had, Chase kind of mentioned on this, is like, how would I utilize somebody like you? For me, I will kind of utilize you a lot less on the game itself. I will actually have you bring in all the experience into real life, because you got to remember these guys are people, you know.
Yeah.
That it's not there's beyond the game. I think I will
What?
utilize you there. Yeah.
You mean they're
we'll
not just
utilize you
gamers?
there to
Hold
have them,
on.
like you said, let the exercises, the breathing stuff, the mechanics of it outside the game itself, you know. That's what I think
Yeah.
you bring a lot more to me, a lot more value than somebody telling them how to play a game. There's no way. The execution, they see it, they play the game. You know, they're obviously pros for a reason, or amateur for a reason. They're there because they actually play something that they are good at right now.
Yeah.
That's already established. So that there's some points to that to help them out how to, you know, execute properly. But to maximize you as a coach, I will definitely use you more on the other things outside of the game. That's just
Yeah.
my take on you.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely. And I think a good way, and this I guess might be a point more for coaching as well. A good way to think about it too is like emotions influence the way people think, right? Like that's we know that like the way you feel influences the way you think. And since esports is largely a mental game, like everything's happening in your mind, the way we think impacts our behavior. So if you look at that chain, our emotions impact our behavior. And the best example of that is like when you get super hungry, obviously, like you start getting angry and then you start hunting for food, right? Like your emotion is impacting your behavior. And the same thing goes for esports. Like if you're really stressed out because of school or because you just had a fight with your friend or your parents are upset at you or whatever it might be, if there is something that's emotionally wrecking you in real life, that's going to bleed into your thoughts in game and then into your behaviors in game because emotions influence thought and thought influences behavior. So it's kind of like exactly what you just mentioned. You got to make sure that everything else in life is taken care of because if it's not, your game is going to suffer for it.
Absolutely, 100% agree on that, for sure.
Well, I said I think that's great advice as well. You know, really, I think everything that you've said tonight has held a very high degree of truth to the vast majority of, you know, people out there. So I want to kind of give you an opportunity to set yourself apart, like in what you do, not just necessarily why you do it or, you know, what kind of stuff you guys do, but for anybody out there that is wanting to, you know, book a session with you or set up with your program, what to me when I go and look at something like this, I'd want to know, hey, there's, you know, a couple other companies out there that do it. What does Landon specialize in? What's the difference there, and how can someone book something with you so that if we have anybody interested in wanting to do that?
Yeah, so the thing that sets me apart from almost anybody else in my field right now is that there's definitely plenty of people in the sports psych and mental performance consulting side of things in esports right now. Like if you look at the LCS or the CSGO scene, almost every pro team has somebody that's like me right now. But the thing that's very different about me compared to all of those people is that I've been a lifetime gamer since like I mentioned at the beginning, like since the day I was born, since the moment that I could walk, I had a controller in my hand. So I think like a gamer. Like that's just who I am. I don't think like a traditional sport athlete. I don't think like a business person. I think like a gamer. And so I truly understand like the rage and the tilt and the anger and the flame and all the negative things that come with esports and gaming. Like I understand that because I've experienced every single one of those things. And that gives me an incredibly unique perspective that almost no other person in my field has. Like if you look at all the pro teams that have people like me in place, almost like 95% of them come from traditional sports and they had no esports or gaming background before coming onto those teams. But for me, it's just like I think, I act, I behave, and I understand esports in a way that no other professional in my industry understands. And I'm sure like there's definitely exceptions that like there is other people in the industry that are like me, but it's very few. Most are traditional sports. Most are just from the psych world or whatever. So they don't truly understand the nuances of what gamers are experiencing, and they think like maybe this anger, like why would you get angry at such a small thing? And they don't understand why that small thing was important, whereas I do because I went through that small thing or I did that at one point. So it gives me a really unique perspective to be able to work with these issues, and I don't just come into this thinking like these sports psychology principles should work on you because they worked in traditional sports, so they should work in esports, and that's not true, right? Like esports is different. Esports has its own identity, it has its own nuances, and I like that's what sets me apart, right? Like it's different. And you have to understand those differences. You have to understand how people think, how they act, what's important to them, and all those kind of things. So that's really what sets me apart from most people in my field.
I would say that
Right
is an elite way to look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
We do have a question from chat from
For sure.
Pinay Princessa. What is the toughest coaching you handled?
Oh man. All right. So the toughest one is this isn't like one specific case, but a lot of times teams think that I can come in and fix a situation after it happens, right? Like I got called in for a Valorant team one time and it was mid-match. It was like
Oh no!
I think it was like it was group stage. It was in the group stage, and they had just played 2 matches. And they got obliterated in those first 2 games. They brought me in, and two and a half. Like there was a third person that was also in this, but 2 of them were yelling at each other. It was just like absolute anarchy and chaos. And they brought me in because they thought that I could calm them down and fix it in the middle of group stages, and that's just.
Sounds like they wanted you to give like a Miracle on Ice speech or something. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Wow. And like I can come in and I can calm people down. I can get them ready to go for the next game. Like I can give them that pep talk. But to truly fix that issue, it's impossible to fix something immediately. And I think I kind of briefed on that earlier when I said like when you're working with athletes, you have to understand that it's going to take time and there has to be patience involved. If you bring me in to fix something that just blew up mid-match, if it's the first time I've ever worked with them,
it's still on fire.
I can give them a pep talk and try to cool them down a little bit, but there's still going to be that tension in the team, and if anything else goes wrong, they're just going to be right back to this spot. So I think that's probably the toughest coaching I have is when teams expect some kind of like miracle cure last minute in the heat of the moment.
Mm. Yeah.
Wow. Great point.
Goes back to what you said though, these things they take time. They're with players, especially with teams. Ugh. It's such
exactly.
If you don't have those like either way back from when you recruited people or you have that regiment like immediately, oh man, it can be that's a rough road to bounce back from,
Exactly.
Something like that
and it's
is
like
catastrophic almost.
Yeah, and it's like you can't throw somebody who's never played League of Legends into the game and expect them to become a challenger within a week. Like it doesn't work like that. And the same goes for mental skills. Like you can't just throw somebody into learning how to control anger and then they're masters at it within a week. Like it just doesn't work that way. It has to take time, and it's a rank up system really. Like you get better and better and better at over time, but there's no instant remedy to it.
Couldn't agree more. So if somebody wanted to book a session with you, where would they go? Your website, email?
Yeah, they could go to my website. Probably the place I'd be quickest at responding would be my Twitter, which is just @VertexPsych. My DMs are always open, and I tried my best to respond within a day or so. Sometimes I'm busy with work or something like that. But if you wanted to book a session or you wanted to even just ask me a brief question on Twitter or whatever it is, that's probably the best place. Just shoot me a message on my DMs.
Cool. I just dropped your Twitter in the chat, so everybody in there, if you're watching this or the replay or you're listening, make sure you head over to twitter.com/vertexpsych.
Mm-hmm.
It's VERTEXPSYC for anybody that doesn't know how to spell that. But I think some of the stuff we talked about today, man, I could go on for so long talking about this, and I'm sure you go on, and every time you talk to someone, these sessions are not short, I would imagine.
No.
I want to say one last kind of like follow-up or wrap-up question here. You mentioned what your like hardest coaching situation is. What's keeping you going through all of this that's going on right now? What's something that you're like clinging on to that keeps you positive and keeps you pushing forward through this like pandemic, I guess, if you could still call it pandemic? I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly, the one thing for this that keeps me going is the exact same reason or the same thing that sets me apart from other people in my field. And it's because I love esports to the absolute core. Like every day that I work in it, I'm more and more excited about it. Through my time working it, I've seen many people come into the industry really excited about it, realize that it is like it's tough to work in esports. Like it's a grind. You have to put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it's draining. And so then they burn out after like 6-12 months of it. But for me, because I grew up in gaming and I grew up in esports, every day that I get to work in it is like an absolute blessing. I love it. And so every week, every month, every year that I'm in it, I just love it even more. And it's exciting. It's because esports changes so rapidly. From the time that I got into it to the time that it is now, it's already changed like drastically. And that's really cool to be part of something that's changing so quick. And it's just, I don't know, it's exciting to be part of an industry that's changing so quickly and growing so fast and that I love.
Oh man, that's like the exact reason why I love it too. I mean, it's crazy.
Exactly, right?
That's definitely rings true over here as well. I think something that's really keeping us going over here is just being so motivated to continue with the growth of what you have right now and where it's going, and God knows who knows what it's going to look like in 5 years. I mean,
that's the thing, right?
I think maybe next year it's going to even look even crazier, so who knows. I'm excited to do it, and I'm excited to do it with all these guys, and now Landon included. I'm glad we got the opportunity to sit down and chat with you. I'm sure we will be talking again.
Yeah, for sure. Let me know. And just a quick thing on that pandemic part too is like, for me, my career and my job, it was going well up until the pandemic. And when the pandemic hit, it was like, on the outside world, it was almost like it legitimized esports, because everybody started looking at esports because traditional sports shut down. Like, I had all my colleagues asking about esports. I know that a lot of sports networks started showing esports, and it took my career to the next level, which is crazy because I know that pandemic hurt a lot of people, but it actually helped my career quite a bit.
I would say that all of the content creators out there watching would probably agree with you.
Yeah, it's honestly a great time for esports. Like, I know it sucks out in the world right now, but gaming's doing great.
Couldn't agree more. It's a great time to be in the space.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that I wish I had picked it up 10 years sooner, but I'm grateful to be in it now. So
yeah, there's how I mentioned, there's every professional team has somebody like me in place already, and I've talked to a lot of them. Like, I've talked to Cloud9 and TSM and CLG and Misfit, like pretty much every team that has a performance coach. I've tried to talk to them, and every single one of them says that they just got in just before me. That's how they got the spot. It was all lucky that they came in a year or two before me. So I was just slightly too late, but I'm still at a good spot, I think.
Hey, well,
right on. I'm glad to hear.
You got a spot on our team when it becomes available.
Oh, there we go.
You'll
Sweet.
be the first person we
forward
call,
to
right?
it.
Right, guys?
Awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, give yourself one little last shout out here, and we'll wrap it up. Get your social handles and where they can find you.
For sure. The best place to get me if you want to ask a question or follow me is Twitter. So it's at Vertex Psych. I think you said you dropped that in the link. I'm constantly tweeting out little sports psych based tips and strategies, or whatever you want to call it. So if you want some of that information, follow me or shoot me a message and ask me a question. I'm always happy to chat. You can also find me on my website, which is just vertex-performance.com. If you're a LinkedIn user, you can also find me, Landon Gorbenko. And then lastly is my Instagram is just landon.gorbenko as well. It's that Instagram is just personal. There's nothing exciting gaming-wise on that. But if you like seeing mountain climbing and camping, that's where to go, because that's my second favorite hobby.
Right on. That sounds like a good balance for you.
Yeah, actually, when we were in that Poland event, after we were done that Apex event, I took off and I went and climbed Poland's tallest mountain. Just
wow, that's sweet.
that was my own little treat for being out there.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty cool.
That sounds like fun.
That was awesome.
It was. Yeah.
Have you ever
watching TV
taken
or something that day.
a group of gamers into like camps like that, like outdoor camps, things
Team
like that?
building exercises?
I would love to, but nobody, because I go like extreme camping. Like, if there's not a threat of me dying, then I'm not there. Like, I go deep wilderness.
He's playing alone by himself.
It's like, so the way I describe to people is I'm not the best gamer in the world, but where I put all my psych and mental skills to the test is when I'm hanging off a cliff in a mountain kind of thing. Like that's where I'm trying to calm myself down and ease my nerves and not tilt or anything like that. So I put it to test when I'm out in the wilderness. But no gamers have taken me up on that offer. A lot say they think they would love to, or they'd love to join me sometime.
I don't know that I can do the
No.
what's it called? Primitive camping?
Yeah, survival camping.
All right, man, I'm gonna go out here. I got a flint and steel, a knife, a tarp, some rope, and a fishing pole. Let's see how far we can go.
Yeah, I actually, fun stories. When I was doing my master's program, I used to print out stacks and stacks of my research. Like, I just have like a full stack. I'd put it in my backpack, and then I did it over in Scotland. So I'd go to the Scottish Highlands, climb a mountain, and then I'd sit on a mountain for the next 2 or 3 or 4 days, reading all my research, taking my notes, then I'd come down and write.
Wow, that's intense, buddy.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that
sounds like a great intro to a book.
Yeah, maybe one day. Who knows?
I'm glad that you're able to transfer that into the esports and gaming community. Like I said, we need more of you guys, more of your kind coming in and providing good vibes, right? Like a good mental health, strong balance, all those things that make teams successful, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Glad to have you, man. We're really happy with this podcast.
Thanks for being on.
I appreciate it
on the podcast.
Yeah, no
and you guys, if you like what you saw, make sure you go drop a follow on Landon's Twitter. If you want to book with him, make sure you visit the website. If you guys like the content, make sure you stop by for the next week's episode. Every week on Thursdays, 8 o'clock, we got an elite guest every week. So if you're trying to learn something, stop by next week. But Landon, appreciate your time, my friend. It was a pleasure to meet you, and great stuff today.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
Not a problem, brother. Anytime.
Sweet.
Take it easy.